at Select Roses. June 26th. Our climbing roses are in full bloom. So what I wanted to show you was a little bit about tying them up. This stand of climbers that we have along here, there's 3 different ones, are growing in containers. And they're doing pretty good. The middle one, Laguna, has finished its first bloom. But this one called Honeymoon, that has been tied up, has some large trusses. It blooms in an absolute mass. And I think we need to tie it up a little bit. So if we look down in the middle of the plant, we can see here, Alana, we have a small piece of binder twine that is holding this in. We're going to replace that with some rubber tubing because it's actually cutting into the plant. We will take some of these other shoots on the outside, we'll tie them up a little bit, but I actually like them where they're down at sort of nose height. Everybody wants to sniff the roses or see them when they're going by. I don't like climbers that are all just jammed up at the top coming out and all you get to see is the blooms at the distance. I actually want them to be a little bit in people's faces, but they shouldn't be catching us on the way by. So we'll do a little bit of work on Honeymoon. We're going to tie it up, try and make it look reasonably relaxed. We'll even let some of it droop over the hanging basket there. Then we'll come back, take a look at it again. Okay, before we do that, let's just move down to these other couple. This is Laguna, which is a hot pink, very fragrant one. You can see it's finished its first blooming. It's shedding off of all the petals here, and the new growth is popping out, and they will be, another couple weeks, another layer of bloom on Laguna. So this is up its 3rd year now, so it's taken just into the 3rd season to reach the top of the arbor. If they were actually in the ground rather than the large pots, they would have shot up there in the 2nd year. Another great favorite of mine is this red one. As the blooms last so long, we don't have to pick them off of the ground. This is a wonderful Cordes climber that is called Amadeous. It's very healthy, and as you can see, this plant here is not enjoying a full day of sun at all, but these big trusses are now hanging over where people might want to enjoy. So what we'll do is we'll get some of our string and we'll tie it up one more layer just to the top there. So they're still looking down at us, still pretty enough to see, but they're just not going to be hitting us in the head. So we'll come back and show you these after we've trained them a little bit, and then we'll have thinned out some of the lower wood. And remember, these are growing in a container. So they're managing okay, but it restricts the growth a lot. We find 3 to 5 years is about the life expectancy of a rose like this in a container. They're great if you pull them out after that, plant them in the ground, they'll take back off again, but they'll slow down after 3 to 5 years being in a container. We will also water these all the time and feed them steady. We use a slow release food, we use a small amount of our food, and then fish fertilizer is great. I'll mix that in, and every now and again we'll dump a whole pail of liquid fish fertilizer that's diluted in water and make sure that it floods the whole pot, and that's what gives us the abundance of bloom for several years in a container. The reason why we have to container grow here is because the ground is so wet. It floods in the winter, there's a high water table. Some people though might just want to enjoy a climber on a deck, so you can put it on a deck, you can build an arbor like this and have beautiful climbers, and then after the 5-year period just swap them out and put some fresh ones in again. Nice, I like that.
Okay,
Imagine
ready?
not a gay boy, it'd be fun to do. Yeah.
Okay, ready?
Yeah. Hey everybody, well, it's Brad here. So we're back looking at the climbers. We did a little bit of tying up. We never actually video the whole part of tying up because we don't want you to hear the cursing and screaming that goes on during that, so we leave that part of it out. And actually, it only took us about 10 minutes to get it done. Remember before, we couldn't sit on the bench here, so that was no good. We had Amadeous hitting us in the face, so we want people to be able to sit down, use our benches. That's the whole idea, having the climbers. So all we did was we took a little bit of a rubber tubing that we had because it was a heavy piece of climber hanging down. We've tied it up, but they're still knotting down. I love when the climbers do that. That's the whole idea, especially if they're a fragrant one, or if you want to use them as a cut flower, you can reach in. So the whole idea is to train your climber so you have bloom at all the different levels rather than just shooting out over the top of your arbor. Over the years, these climbers that we have are vigorous enough to grow up over the arbor and spread along. If we had great soil with wonderful drainage under here and we had put these in the ground, that wouldn't be an issue at all, but we're still going to be restricting them somewhat because of the pots. On this side we had Laguna. This was the first one to bloom. Very, very early blooming, really fragrant. You can just see the last remainder of the flowers that are falling off on Laguna, but it's already setting up for its second blooming. So there's a bud that's coming there. There's a few more buds that are coming there. So by the early July, we'll have the second light blooming of Laguna, and she'll take a rest, and then later in September, we'll have a nice blooming again. What I noticed about this rose, it can be fairly prickly, so this is one I often put away everything at the base, because again, you want your friends to be able to sit down and not get connected to the rose, but still have some pretty blooms that they can reach up and smell them. Let's take a look at the honeymoon that we planted over here. So honeymoon is cascading out over this side, maybe a little bit towards the bench, so we might cut a few of those and bring them in the house and enjoy those. And we've taken the rest of the trusses and raised them up just a little bit so that they're not right up at the top, they're still down at the level we can sniff them as we walk by, but they're in again another 1.5 feet compared to being out in the middle where we didn't want them congesting the traffic way. So honeymoon is tied up there. The one I want to show you is the honeymoon that's in the best spot. So this is getting a lot of sunshine. It is growing in the same size container, maybe a little bit bigger, but the most important thing is this plant of honeymoon you're going to see is enjoying sun all day. These ones are shaded by our trees and they get sporadic sun. So look at the difference. If we just come through there, we can see that giant plant of honeymoon in the gray pot, looking wonderful. We'll step through the arbor here, take another look at it. There's a few black twines in there holding it together, but again, I like the idea of the plant cascading out. It has double the bloom set of the other ones. There's no black spot, no mildew on it at all. And this is its first big heavy set of bloom. So we'll enjoy a good 6 weeks out of this. And when it's finished, we won't be afraid to do what I call a firm, hard deadheading. So we'll cut that back into the plant, we'll shear it off, and we'll get a nice layering of blooming again. Also, we will change up the soil each spring, a couple inches off the layer of the top, put some compost, a little bit more fertilizer, and then through this course of this summer, we'll be doing fertilizing quite regularly as well. So you can have a great looking climber in a pot. The one thing they hate though, if you do have them in a pot, is where there is reflected heat. So if we had a pot against a really hot wall, that would stress this plant. You would have spider mites and different things like that. The pot would be heated up. So notice wherever our climbers are, they're out in the complete open. There's good air circulation all around them. They're getting as much sun as possible, but there is some shade throughout the day. But overall, I think considering they're in a container, they're giving us good bud set. There's hundreds of blooms coming on these ones. And they're looking great. That was one of the Cordes varieties again, honeymoon climber.